we create our own reality, right? So what does that really mean? How are we creating it? Am I creating all of this unhealthy things happening in my body? Am I creating all of these horrible things that keep coming at me? Am I bringing people into my life that aren't for my highest good? How am I creating this, right? So the question is, are you really creating it? And I always say yes, but not from the beginning. Because from the beginning, we come into this life to learn. And who are we learning from? We're learning from people that are also not self-aware.
So I'd like to welcome everybody to Mindset Monday. And today we're going to be talking to Kelly Tallaksen.
Tallaksen.
And so Kelly is a distinguished board certified hypnotist. So Kelly's educational background is anchored by a doctorate in metaphysical hypnosis from the University of Metaphysics. And she is a prolific author for her works, Healing Our Unhealed Parts and The Voiceless Soul, is reflecting on her deep commitment to addressing the human behavior in the soul's journey. Her influence extends through her articles and her active role as co-producer in the upcoming film, The Voice of Spirit. This makes her a respected figure in the area of metaphysical and personal development. And Kelly, I'd just like to welcome you. I consider you a personal friend. You're supportive. You show up to the different events, and you share such a wisdom. And part of this is just this human journey that we have. So when we're talking about mindset on Mindset Monday, it's this idea of how do we become aware of our levels of consciousness?
That's a good question because I do always talk about self-awareness is the most important thing on this journey, but it's something so many people lack, and it's not their fault. The problem is we have certain programs in our mind, right, that are in the subconscious mind, but the subconscious mind influences 90% of our behavior. So if we're not aware, self-aware of these programs, then they're running our life without our knowledge. And then we'll call it either bad luck or we'll question, why has this always happened to me? So let's look at the old cliche, we create our own reality, right? So what does that really mean? How are we creating it? Am I creating all of this unhealthy things happening in my body? Am I creating all of these horrible things that keep coming at me? Am I bringing people into my life that aren't for my highest good? How am I creating this, right? So the question is, are you really creating it? And I always say yes, but not from the beginning. Because from the beginning, we come into this life to learn. And who are we learning from? We're learning from people that are also not self-aware. So they're not aware of their programming in their subconscious mind. So 90% of their behavior towards themselves and being projected toward us comes from programming from the people that influence them. So we look back at our ancestry and we come to the understanding that we are evolving, but our ancestors weren't as evolved as us, right? They weren't as civilized as us, if we want to go back even farther. So what are we passing forward? We're passing forward this programming. And until somebody becomes self-aware, that programming will continue to the next generation. We are in a generation of self-awareness, which is the best news ever. We are in a place where The whole planet is going through a transformation, individually and collectively. So this is the exciting part about being alive right now, is that we are going through this transformation, but we do need to be very self-aware to be able to be part of this transformation. And that means looking back at your ancestors and the programming you have and become aware that they did not have the resources you have today. They did not come in with this energy that the planet is now experiencing at a higher level. And they really do need our understanding, loving, compassion, whether they're still in a body or on the other side, in order for them to heal. So that means release the judgment, show more compassion and love, practice a Ho'oponopono. And what does that mean? It means heal yourself first, so you're not projecting out into the world. Because with everybody projecting all of their pain out into the world because of their old programming of fear and invalidation and feeling unlovable and unworthy, the more we all project it collectively, the more we're bringing down the entire planet. And now we're being taught that we have to step into self-love in order to heal this planet on a collective level. Does that resonate?
There's so much with what you shared, and I'd like to dig into all of it. I think I'm going to start with just the first simple concept of, we talk about self-awareness, but what does that mean to you? It's like, to me, it's this reflection, and I feel like I've stepped onto the path of self-awareness because you quit being the pawn of the experiences of those around you, right? And looking externally for all the causes of the feelings that you're experiencing. And you actually realize that we have immense power over self-regulating. We have immense power over influencing our own state of being. And we have immense power on how we feel in life. We can actually change the chemistry of our human experience with intention, by where we place our focus. In practicing this over time, we can actually get better at feeling better. And so when it comes to self-awareness, what does that mean to you on a personal and a collective experience?
On a personal level, it means I have to do my own internal work, which means I have to look where I have suppressed feelings and emotions that are really not who I am, but they're an experience of something I went through. So when I look at and separate the emotions from the experience, I have to look at who's involved. Who am I angry at? Who did not show up for me the way I needed them to for me to feel good about myself? And I have to forgive them on a heartfelt level, not on a superficial level. And too many people are forgiving on a superficial level because they hear, oh, I have to forgive them or else I can't move on. But what they don't realize is that I'm going to go into my parts therapy training here and just say we have an adult self that is forgiving on a superficial level because there's a child part in us that's still holding on to resentment. And the reason a child part holds on to resentment is because it's the only power we had when we felt disempowered, because we were small, we were vulnerable, and we didn't have any kind of physical power to fight back. We were completely under the control of the people, caring for us. So the only power we can grab onto is the resentment. And since we didn't know how to forgive them as a child, the resentment became part of our shadow part, the part we suppress within us because we don't want to be that adult that's angry. So we suppress it. But that resentment is still there. So when we're trying to logically forgive, we still have another part of us that needs to hold on to the resentment. So by going deeper within and going back to that inner part of us, that child part of us, and reminding them that your experience does not define you. And it really doesn't define the people that were caring for you. It just basically tells you that they were not in a place of self-love. It doesn't mean they're not lovable, and it doesn't mean you're not lovable. It doesn't mean they're not worthy. It's just that they didn't feel that. So they projected their pain onto you unknowingly as part of their programming. So if you could forgive them and understand them and have compassion and know that they did do their best, even though it wasn't enough for you, and realize that they loved you the best the way they knew how, But if they didn't give you what you needed, it doesn't mean you didn't deserve it. It doesn't mean you were not worthy of it. But you're going to have to understand on a deeper heartfelt level that that energy is still trapped in your body as an emotion of feeling unworthy. So you have to show yourself love now. You have to make up for what they couldn't give you, because whatever they were deficient in, they caused for you to feel deficient in the same thing. So love them for trying their best, but love yourself for being able to grow up and deal with it the best way you could, and give yourself the opportunity now to say, I understand now that they could not give me what I needed, but I can do that now. And I can validate myself, and I can love them for trying their best. Even though so much of what they've done or didn't do for me hurt me, I realize now that that was an emotion I held on to. It was an experience, but it doesn't define me. And I know we could talk like this for years and still not heal, because we have to do it on a feeling level, not a logical level, because the emotions are in the body. So we have to embody the self-love, not just talk about it. We have to truly embody it. Because I think love is a consciousness. It's not really a feeling, it's a consciousness we have to embody. And that can only come from our own validation.
It's amazing that you pull these words together, because my path of self-awareness, the defining moment where I chose to be on that path was when I was in this place of resentment, right? I was highly sensitive. I didn't like the feeling of how I felt when
Yeah.
I was in conflict. I didn't like the feeling of how I felt when, I was in fear. And so I ran into this space of conflict, and so I was outside and now mired in deep resentment. I didn't like that feeling either. And that was when I made a pivotal choice in my life to say, you know what? I'm not going to do this for somebody else, right? I'm not going to people please in this moment. I'm going to make it an offering to God. I'm going to make it a connection to my backyard, right? I even imagine like the animals walking on the yard and doing all
Yeah.
these other
Hmm.
things. And that was the first time that I entered a flow state intentionally.
Hmm.
It was a huge swing, because I was mired in this place of conflict. I was mired in this place of resentment, and then to change our human experience, and to be in this place of flow and of connectedness and spirituality. It was really a beautiful experience. And then the next thing happened is I was so excited about this because I was able to achieve the work that I wanted to get done.
Yeah.
It went with ease and flow. And I was really excited about this breakthrough that I had of how good I was feeling and how much better life was. And when I walked back in the house, I walked right back into chaos, right? I walked right back into conflict. And I had to intentionally make another shift into, like, I'm not going to allow myself to be in this. I am going to go back into this. And I made some choices. So I love the fact that you mentioned resentment, because I think that that's a feeling there. And then when all this came together, I had this sense of, well, how could I let somebody treat me so poorly for so long and think it was okay? And then it was this idea of not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling lovable. And so what you're mentioning, I think, is part of the human experience, because so many people have that feeling and they may not even know that they have it, right? It may just be this underlying consciousness that is sabotaging their plans and ruining their relationships and causing heartache. So my question to you is, how do you step onto that path of knowing? How do you open up that door to consciousness where you can so you can become self-aware and you can start feeling better about life?
Well, so what I did is to help people on a bigger scale than just working one-on-one clients, is I wrote the book, The Voiceless Soul, which explains all of this. And it's really trauma to transformation. And I teach people how to write letters. And I know for the longest time, people have been writing letters expressing anger and then burning them, throwing them out, ripping them up. And I don't think people don't understand one thing is that the anger is still there, because all you did was throw it out into the ethers. It's going to come right back to you.
As we
You
look at the
cannot
fire above
express
your head.
anger. You're right. You can't express anger and then burn it. Okay. But you should express your anger. So I teach them how to write letters. So your letter can start out with, when you did this, it made me feel. Okay. And because what you're doing, you're saying, when you did this, you want to express how it made you feel. Don't point fingers and don't blame, because that's keeping you trapped in the anger. But say, when this happened, it made me feel. When you didn't show me love, it made me feel. Okay. But then close your letter with loving compassion and forgiveness. Close your letter with, But now I understand. I understand that you were trapped in your own feelings of unworthiness, and you could not see your own spirit within you, and therefore could not see it in me. So I forgive you for not loving yourself. I forgive myself for believing I was not lovable. And I wish you well on your journey, and I wish, and I will continue my journey knowing that you did try your best. So when you close it that way, what you did is you diffused the anger, you've accepted the situation, you showed loving compassion for the person and yourself, and you understand human consciousness and that we're all here to experience this. And once you do that, you're not bringing anger back at you, you're bringing more loving compassion back to you, because whatever you express out into the world, into the atmosphere, into the ethers, is surrounding you, it's coming back to you. So don't throw out anger and expecting it to go away. It won't. You have to express compassion and love at the end of all of this. But it's okay to express the anger. You have every right to be angry, but you will continue to hold on to that unless you close it with love and compassion for all involved.
I love that. And you had mentioned forgiveness, earlier on. And to me, forgiveness is it's this release of attachment to the emotion, right? So somebody wrongs you, and forgiveness to me is not saying that it's okay. It's not saying that you accept their behavior as something uh, that you've forgotten about, or that has not even caused you deep hurt. It's just saying that, yes, you hurt me in the past, but I choose willingly not to be hurt in this present moment by the thing that you did, so wrong in the past. And it breaks this link, this emotional bonding that we have to the pain that this person caused. And so there's a freedom that happens when anytime you can break those trauma, that link to trauma, that link to wounding. It doesn't mean that it goes away. It doesn't mean that you're saying that it's okay that it happened. It just says that I am now free from the pain that you caused me in the past. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful way of it's just a wonderful way of release. And so I wanted to ask you, with your book and the reason that you wrote your book, and what was the primary purpose behind that? What's the mission in life?
Well, I had so many incredible sessions with clients by getting them into a deep trance. I would say the theta state, which is really slowing down the brain waves, getting their body very relaxed. And then I would guide their consciousness into their higher self so they could channel their higher self. The higher self only comes from love, right? Love, compassion, and forgiveness. If you don't help them channel their higher self, they're going to stay trapped in their lower self, which is that 3D experience of pain. So, since these sessions were incredible, I said, how do I help people on a larger scale? So, I decided to write the book. So, when I teach people in the book how to write letters, it's almost like the same thing I'm showing my client in the chair in hypnosis. They're not writing a letter, but I'm taking them through the process of expressing how they feel, but from their higher self. Can you see it differently from your higher self? So, what I do is when they're in their higher self, I had them channel the person they're angry at. And then I ask them to channel the child in the person they're angry at. And once they do that, the compassion becomes automatic because nobody could be angry at a child in distress. Once they channel the younger version of that person that's living inside that grown up body, they truly understand that that came from an unconscious part of the person. So, back to our levels of consciousness, we have the higher self, right? Then we have the 3D consciousness where we are living every day. And then we have the shadow self, the unconscious, right? So once we bring all these levels of consciousness together and we can see the bigger picture from our whole spiritual essence with love and compassion, that's when people start to soften and they start to realize that this was a human error. That's it. And then forgiveness is a lot easier. And it actually has brought more people back to healing relationships with their parents, their siblings, even people on the other side. So I tell them no matter if this person is still in their body or whether they've left their body and they're on the other side, it doesn't matter because collectively in spirit, we're all one. And we can channel each other's consciousness in the collective. But we have to get out of that 3D level of consciousness because the ego will get in the way and the protectors will get in the way. So we want that all relaxed. And how do we do that? Through trance, right? We get the person out of that ego mind, get them to go deep within. So what do we hear a lot? Go within, go within. Okay, what does that mean? That means go into your spirit. That means go into your higher consciousness, rise above this third dimensional level of fear and look at the bigger picture from love. And that's when people soften. And I said, I need to help more people. So through the book, I explain certain stories about why our parents do what they do or why our ancestors have done what they've done, because they're stuck in survival consciousness. They're stuck in that lower level below even the 3D, which is the unconscious, which is completely out of their awareness. And that survival energy, as we were discussing prior to coming on, is that it's still in us. We still have a primary brain, but we can't let our primary brain be our focus in this third dimensional realm. We have to let our higher mind take over so that we can live more from love and compassion and not from a survival consciousness, because that's what's going to put us in that protective mode and keep us in resentment, keep us in our anger, right?
And it's a beautifully put. And I've had an experience with that. And it's a place of perspective, right? Your spiritual consciousness or your higher self. All of these are perspectives, and they're all valid at the same time, right? So we can be in
Yes.
the full ego state of, our human experience, everything that we've learned, everything that we've experienced, the justifications for this and that. And within that space is these critical thoughts that come through, right? It's that critical narrative that says you're not good enough or you're not
Yeah.
lovable, or
Mhm.
all of these things that in some cases drive people to great success. And I had that happen within my experience, which was this critical narrative was um, putting out the most catastrophic thoughts of this is going to happen, and isn't your life over now, and haven't you ruined everything? And I just got to be too much. And I had to say, you know what? I can't think like this anymore. And so I had that neural pathway shift of saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in this spiritual consciousness, right? I'm going to bring in this different perspective. And because I had lived with that critical voice so long, telling me that I wasn't good enough and that I was going to fail at at this and that, I expected great resistance, right? Because in my
Mhm.
imagination, I said, okay, I'm going to, this voice has got to go to timeout. And I sent it to the bedroom. It's like,
Yeah.
and I expected resistance, right? Because it is that inner child. It is that judgment. And
Mhm.
what my experience was, which was different, which was when the spiritual side came in, and I just imagined, taking this empty space and filling it up with love and light and, that love consciousness. Um, there was no judgment. There was not even any judgment of how critical that thought was, and that
Mhm.
experience was.
Yeah.
And I thought there would be resistance from this critical side of me, but there wasn't. It's like the thought that I had was, well, good luck, he's a handful, good luck with it.
Exactly. Well, what the word you use, resistance, is very important because it's not the emotions that trap us, it's the resistance to the emotions that we don't want to feel that way. And the more we resist it, the more powerful it gets because now we're trying to control it.
Right.
Now
Right.
we're focused on it, right?
And
So we can release our resistance to that feeling and say, okay, it's a feeling. I don't like it, but let me work with it so that if you could show love around the feeling and say thank you for showing up, thank you for teaching me that I feel this and that I am not loving myself in this moment, and have gratitude for those emotions, then we won't be resisting them anymore.
right.
But it's that resistance that's going to hold us back.
It's interesting because we do have the two hemispheres of our brain, and we can have competing
Hmm.
thoughts at the same time. So you can have one thought on
Yes.
one side, and you can have another thought on the other side.
Yeah.
And then we also have that spirituality, right? This idea of there's something more than just the human form. So we have all of these competing concepts that may be going on, and to have that sense of peace come in is a beautiful thing because what I've noticed is that if you can drop into this place of acceptance where you realize that your value is independent of your human experience, right? Just the fact that you're here, that you're breathing is inherently valuable. And then
Mhm.
we're students in this life. Just the fact that we experience life and that we experience emotion, even the suffering is of immense value, but also is the beauty, right? The joy, the positive things that we experience, the love. And if we can embrace that, then it's a celebration. And so we actually become students of life rather than trying to be the expert or prove our significance. And if we can step into that place of being, it's really the growth mindset of realizing that we're imperfect, but we get better with practice. It frees us up to actually be significant because we now we will end up being in the company of people that are highly successful. We'll be in the company of people that can teach us something, and we're not afraid of not having the answer. And from that space, we become quite significant because we're the average of the people that we spend our time with. And so we're now spending our time with people that are more successful, and we're not afraid of the fact that we're not successful or that we haven't achieved whatever. So it opens up that door to doing the very thing that we're trying to do. So
Exactly. We don't want to be trapped in the undeserving either, right?
yes.
Because that can also go back to that conflict within the mind, right? The conscious mind, the subconscious mind. Yes, I deserve it. No, I don't, right? So that conflict that you're talking about is it's all part of that parts therapy. Like you got to work with those parts of you that are in conflict with your truest desires. They have to align.
Right. So, with all of the work that you've done, so you have become the president of the National
The
Guild of
local
Hypnotists
chapter,
for the
yeah.
Long Island chapter. Um,
Mhm.
what drew you into hypnosis? What drew you to become involved with this and to study this?
Well, actually, I was a paralegal for 25 years. I loved the work. It was very exciting, and I loved the whole excitement of it. But I really feel like I was tapped on the shoulder by something higher than me. And it came to a point where I said, I have to heal myself because I was getting physically ill over stress. And I didn't know what the stress was because my life wasn't really that stressful, but yet every little thing became a big stress and I didn't know why. So I first started out with working on my physical body, changing my diet, eating more healthy, exercising, drinking a lot of water, cutting out anything that was bad for me. And that was very helpful, but there was something missing. So I started looking into emotional stuff. And the reason I was doing that is because I was following this doctor on the internet. His name is Dr. McCullough. I don't know if anybody knows of him, but he's very into nutrition. And what I was reading, it was saying how, if you're still getting sinus infections, you're not doing the following. And I was constantly getting sinus infections, especially when I was under stress. So I'm like, well, what am I not doing? I'm taking the supplements, I'm eating right, I'm exercising. I don't know what I'm not doing right. So the last thing it said is I'm checking everything off. It says, and you're not harboring any childhood trauma. And that's when I went, wait a minute, what? What does that have to do with my sinus infections? Well, it had everything to do with it because the stress was lowering my immune system and I was getting infections very easily. So I started reading every book on childhood trauma like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I could open up a library at this point. And the more I learned, the more it kept guiding me toward the subconscious, right? The subconscious, the inner child, the programming, Dr. Bruce Lipton's books, and all of those books that teaches about a childhood trauma and how it's trapped in the unconscious. So I was like, well, how do I get to that? And that's where hypnosis came in. And then I started reading about that. And then I said, you know what? I need to learn this. So I did, and I loved it so much. And from my background of reading all those books on childhood trauma, I ended up saying this is what I want to focus on. And so I did, and it's been successful. And within 1 and 2 sessions, people are really connecting deeper with their spirit, forgiving more, loving themselves more. They're not yelling at their children anymore. They're not kicking their dog anymore. They're doing better in life and they're getting healthier on all levels. So I found it to be a very rewarding experience, not only for myself, but for me to bring it out to my clientele.
That's amazing. It's one of those things that I was trying to understand, how it works. I knew it worked because my path was that I had taken and studied self-hypnosis for sleep, and I was part of a study.
Oh.
And then when somebody needed some help in the future, I just drew on that experience and was able to take somebody into a trance state and had very surprising, effects and responses with that. And then somebody came to me later on and wanted to quit smoking. And it's just a funny story because the person forgot completely about quitting smoking. But because of the time before, the time before it was this experience of the person wanted to sleep. But in the script that I had, it was this orange fluid filled the body. And the person that I was working with had a spinal cord injury. So they had very low blood pressure. When the blood pressure started rising up to the normal level, as this fluid was imagined filling the body, it had an impact on their physiology. And I thought, I just became fascinated, like, okay, what power does this idea have, or this, how powerful is the mind, is what came to me. And so I became really careful of what I said, in that space, because I didn't want to have any unintended consequences. And so with this person that wanted to quit smoking, and this is still before I was trained, right? So it was just this idea of going into this very focused place of deep immersion into the thought or into the concept. And I said, okay, when you're in this space, instead of, if you have the feeling that you want to smoke, that you'll drop into deep relaxation. And then from this space, you can choose whether you want to
Hey,
smoke or not.
Clementa.
And and what was interesting about that is that the it opened up this place for her to, she came back the next day and said that the session didn't have any effect on her. But what ended up happening is that the next day she had not done any laundry. She hadn't, she sat on the couch. She just didn't really do anything. And
Okay.
she'd actually forgotten to smoke all day.
I love it. I love
So
it.
it's an
Isn't that
interesting
fabulous?
story, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and by with training, you can learn to actually be more constructive with what you do and how you focus the sessions, and realize that all of this comes from the person, right? It's their
Mm-hmm.
own belief, it's their own, experience that frames all of this, and that we can have an influence over people by opening up that possibility. So I love that.
100%.
So with all that you've done, we've got a couple people here that will open it up to some questions and things like that. With all that you've done, what's been the most significant thing that you've recognized with the work that you do to help people, or with this journey of life? What's the most significant thing that you have come across so far?
So far, I would say it's the book, The Voiceless Soul, which is now going to be an animated movie. Because I realize how important it is, because we can't just keep logically speaking about forgiveness. We have to feel it. And people are so closed off to feeling because it's a self-protective mechanism. And we have to come back to feeling, because if we don't feel it, it's not going to change it. We are emotional beings. Everything is our emotions, right? So a lot of the population is closed off to their own emotions. So the reason I wrote the book was to trigger the emotions. And a lot of people have contacted me and says, you really triggered me, but it helped because you forced me to face something I didn't want to face. And there are, throughout the book, letters written from the child to the parent, or from the child to the parts of themselves that they have rejected, which become their shadow self, right? So even in the book, I wrote a letter from me to me, but I was writing a letter from me as an 8-year-old to my angry and jealous part. And that was because when I was about 8 years old, my mom and dad had already separated. And I went to visit my dad's new girlfriend and to meet her for the first time. And I remember being with one of my other siblings. I don't really know which one, but I do have the picture in my mind of being at this woman's apartment, her coming out, putting dinner on the table, and then two little girls came out that I've never seen, and they ran up to my father and said, Daddy. Well, that threw me into a shock because I felt like I was just replaced. That he has now a new wife. Well, they weren't really married, but a new woman in his life, not my mom. And now he's got new children. Now, they weren't his children biologically, but they called him daddy. And it threw me into shock. So I had to repress that part because I couldn't be angry in that moment because I didn't want to feel any more worse than I felt already. And I didn't want to be rejected any more than I already felt rejected. So I had to suppress the angry part and the jealous part. So what I did is I wrote a letter from my younger self to those parts of me. Dear angry and jealous part, I'm sorry that I had to suppress you, but I did not know how to process these heavy emotions. But I want you to know that you are lovable. I love you, and I want you to be a part of me because that's a part of me I'm rejecting in myself. If you reject a part of yourself, you're going to feel fragmented. And I wanted to feel whole again. So throughout the book, there's letters from me to my mom, to my dad, showing deep forgiveness, how they made me feel, how I understand now, how their journey went wrong for them, causing the journey to go wrong for me, and how we could bring it and correct it and make it right through love and compassion. So I was triggering people as they're reading these letters. So I was getting more phone calls and emails saying, wow, you really taught me how to write a letter and release a lot of energy. So appreciate this book. So I was really happy about that. And then I think it was my most recent review, or right before that, I was reading a review that came. I don't know who the woman is, but she wanted to know why this information wasn't more mainstream. And I said, yeah, how do I get this out more mainstream? And then I was talking to somebody, and the next thing you know, spirit again hits me on the head. It said, create an animated film, because I wanted it animated because these are hard concepts to digest. And in an animated film, it softens it a little bit because I am going to show a little bit of trauma, but the release of the trauma through love and compassion. But the film is only about 30 minutes long. I actually wrote a song that's going to be played at the end of the film, but I'd like to continue into segments because it is going from trauma to transformation. But the film opens up with a conversation between the zygote, which is the child in the womb, with their spirit, and the spirit is explaining what the physical journey is about, and basically saying, stay with me, stay in your heart, stay connected to me, because I'm your guidance system. So
It's quite beautiful. And you think about that, and from a child's perspective, especially a child that's going through the split of a parent,
mm, yeah,
the background thought is that mom and dad will get back together, because it's like you want to have
yeah,
maximum amount of time with
yeah,
both parents at the same time, and you want everything to work out in the storybook picture. And then it always creates that conflict, because it's like, it's a mourning process when you
mm-hmm,
realize this may not happen, right? That now there's this whole new family and this whole new dynamic. You have to, you're mourning the belief that mom and dad will get back together, and you're mourning this belief um that I'm the only one, right? I'm the that this is my family, right? It's like there's a
yeah,
lot there
yeah.
for the people that would like to maybe incorporate some of this healing process that you've talked about. Is it to think in like a childlike state, to think of yourself as like your inner child, and say, okay, what letter needs to be written to what emotion today? Is that kind of the concept, or?
The concept is to get yourself into a trance. So I teach a little bit of self-hypnosis in the book. I use a little heart math with it, and the heart math would be to breathe into your heart and just imagine your breath flowing in and out of your heart. Because what you want to do is you got to connect with the feelings. You got to get just out of that logical, analytical mind, or you're not going to resolve anything. You have to get into the body where all the emotions are flooding your body. Okay. So breathing into the heart and really connecting the mind and the heart. Well, let's say the brain and the heart, because the mind really floods through the body. So the brain and the heart, and just breathe in and out, and just keep, you can either count backwards or just keep saying, I'm going deeper and deeper into myself, deeper and deeper, relax. I am calm. I am peaceful, deeper and deeper. And as you do that, you start to slow the brain waves down. And as you start to slow the brain waves down, what does that do? It opens up the subconscious. It's just like when you're first falling asleep. And then you go into that delta state, and all of a sudden the subconscious mind takes over, right? So we want to get you into a space where you're more in an alpha or theta state of consciousness, which is the slower brain waves, and out of that logical, analytical mind, because I don't want you to analyze anything. I just want you to feel it. And once you start to feel it, you can ask that child in you questions. How do you feel? Where do you feel stuck in life? What do you need that you didn't receive? Can I give that to you now? Will you accept that from me? Or I'm sorry I rejected you. You have to connect with these parts of you, and then you want to integrate them and say, I would like to take you home now. In other words, I want you to grow up with the rest of me, because that part of you is still trapped in the space and time of that crisis that you're experiencing. It hasn't matured emotionally. That's where the emotions are still active and trapped in the body.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I want to invite anyone that would like to come on camera or unmute and ask a question to join us. So I'll throw that idea out there. So with the work that you're doing, Kelly, and people can kind of prepare if they're wanting to come and ask a question or engage. But with the work that you're doing, is there like a message, or is there a mission that you have? What would you like to say to somebody that's going through life and possibly struggling or wanting to have something different?
Yeah, my mission in life and what I'd like everybody to know is that the reason I do the work I do is because until I was able to understand the story behind the story, I couldn't heal. And what I mean by that is it's not just about me. We are a collective. We collectively experience this entire world, right? And we experience trauma. We all do on some level, and we all experience it differently. So I've gone through that separation, divorce at my parents. I also went through, my father was deemed mentally ill and was very abusive, but I had to understand his story. What made him that way? Instead of me focusing on why, how about look at the bigger picture? What made him that? Where did it go wrong for him? Not what's wrong with him, not what's wrong with me, but where did it go wrong for him? And then I found out that he was, well, I knew the story, but I had to go deeper into it with compassion and realize that at 8 years old, he was thrown into an orphanage and he was sodomized for cigarettes. His sister died in the orphanage and he wasn't allowed to say goodbye to her. So he had a lot of rage and he was in survival mode his whole life. So was he trying to hurt me? No, he was trying to hurt a part of himself that I was triggering. Because when, as a child, he saw me as a child, he saw himself. And what did that do? It brought up all that rage, and it was uncontrollable for him. And I had to find love and compassion for him, for the little boy in him that's trapped inside that big, imposing body that came after me as a child. I had to have compassion and forgiveness. And once I knew his story and why he did what he did, I was able to release my attachment to the pain because I realized that he wasn't the bad person I made him out to be. I wasn't the bad little girl he made me out to be. It was all unconscious. It was all survival. And once I understood that and I was able to truly forgive him from a heartfelt level, it released all that pain from me, all the resentment, all the disempowerment. And I suddenly felt this release because I understood. And now I pray for him on the other side to heal all the pain that he had to endure on this planet. And same thing with my mom. Not that my mom did anything near what he did, but she didn't stop it. So I had to forgive her for being so afraid of being alone and so afraid of being unloved and so afraid of raising 5 kids on her own that she put up with so much. So I had to forgive her that and understand why she wasn't able to get out of her own trap of unworthiness. And that's how you find healing, is to see the bigger picture outside of just what you're feeling and understand that other people have been through their own trauma, but it hasn't been healed. And they're going to project it unconsciously. They don't mean to do it. 90% of our behavior comes from the unconscious. And if that's not healed, it's going to be projected onto the world. We see it happening all around us. People that hurt children, people that hurt animals, people that hurt people in a loving relationship and they sabotage them. Why do they sabotage a good, healthy relationship? Because deep inside, they don't feel worthy of a good, healthy relationship. But yet you're going to personalize it like you weren't good enough for them. But when you understand, no, they didn't feel good enough for the relationship. And that's why they did a sabotage of it. That's going to help you release it from yourself and forgive them for not loving themselves.
And there's so much there because, and I think part of this is the transformation of our experience. And then it's the awareness that you had started off in the beginning talking about, of realizing that there is, there is something that comes from this. Like, I'm just thinking about all the people that you're helping with your book and the movie that's coming out. There's a lot of healing that will come from the fact that you had to heal your own pain, right? So you
Yes.
and the journey is I do believe that we first journal about it, we first write about it, and then that helps us compartmentalize and to make sense of some of the things that we're experiencing. And then the next thing we may be able to do is to speak about it, to share.
Yeah.
And then eventually we'll share to the point where we get comfortable with our story and in this journey and this progression. And then we start healing. And then once we start healing, then we can actually teach, right? We can teach other people how to go through this journey of journaling, of going through it. And then I think that we write a book about it. And at that point, we're now teaching other
Right.
people the healing journey.
Right.
We're instructing them. And I think we actually come full circle, and then we can actually become motivational speakers or speak to people about the book we've written and then have
Right.
more of an impact on that. So with you on this journey, is there anything else that's added to this journey of healing, or anything else that's added on, just awakening, moving through this trauma of self-healing, of finding what it is that can make, put peace to the pain that we've experienced in life?
Yeah, I think what we need to realize is that a lot of people are living from what's called the false self. And what develops a false self is back to that childhood wounding where there were certain parts of us we expressed that the adults in our life have shut down on us. So we had to shut it down. So, in order to compensate for that shutdown, so for example, if you have a parent that says, stop talking because I can't listen to you anymore. Okay. But yet, as an adult, you want to be a motivational speaker, you want to speak up, you want to tell your story, but you keep hearing that voice of shut it down. So now you've suppressed that part of you and you're afraid to speak up, right? So you create a false self, which is a shy, timid person, but that's not who you are because coming into this world, you were trying to express yourself, but that got shut down by an authoritative figure. Now you have to create a false self for acceptance. Nobody wants to hear me. So I'll create the false self of the shy, timid person. That would be more acceptable to society, right? So keep in mind that most people are living through a false self. You really don't know who they are because they don't know who they are until they've done their deep healing. So don't judge because your judgment is not helping them. What helps them is to just let them be who they are, let them have their journey, show love and compassion, because that's what's going to help them. It's going to help them return back to their true divine self, is by understanding that they're living through a false self only for their own self protection. And so we need to release the judgment because when we judge, what are we doing? We're carrying an energy that's low level. Judgment is a low level energy. We don't want to carry that energy. It's not conducive to healing this planet. So, on a collective level, if we could all step more into compassion, understand that there's a lot of false personalities out there only because of self-protection, not because anybody's trying to get over on you, not because anybody wants to treat you badly or unkindly. They're in self-protection.
Yeah, and I think there's part of that is this fear of not being good enough again. A lot of it comes
Always.
back to this idea that we judge others because we're afraid of having that spotlight on ourselves, and we're afraid
Yeah.
of somebody just looking over at us and saying, "Oh, we're not good enough." And I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit of I've seen so many people that have been very critical of others because they're critical of themselves. So we reflect outwardly what it is that we have internally. And so to me, it's this idea of if you really want to be, if you want to have a good life, it's to find out what is missing in the world and then to create that yourself. So if you're seeking love, then find out what it is for you to be that loving person, right? Really embody that. And if you want to be generous, learn how to be generous yourself. And it's this whole idea of we're here to create the very thing that we're seeking externally because we know it's missing in the world. And the moment that we create that, I do believe that the world is a better place because it's now healed, it's now whole. And and then we will attract those that are like-minded or like energy, and that will be a beautiful space to be in.
I
With
love that. I love
with
that.
with all that you've done, is there anything that you found that like a first small step? Because people struggle with this, with change. They struggle with making a step in any direction. What would be helpful for somebody that's wanting to make a change that may have gone through a difficult life or have
Yeah.
self-doubts? What would be an idea to help them make that first step?
Well, what I can offer is on my YouTube channel, there's a meditation called the Ascension Meditation. And that actually takes you into that spirit world and has you look upon your 3D experience and to call forward the parts of you that need you right now, that need healing, that need something from you. And then if you could give it to that part of you and then integrate it back into the whole of who you are, that'll help bring more balance into your life. So that's one thing. And if anybody's interested, you can send me an email and I will send you what's called my 3-part series, which is based on parts therapy, which is working with that conflict, right? Because you got the conscious mind and the subconscious mind conflicting. It helps you work through those conflicts. And that includes a little bit of a discussion about what the different parts of us and why we end up in conflict and why it's hard to get out of that conflict. And then it takes you through a meditation to acknowledge the parts of you that need healing. And then the third part is after you've integrated all your parts, the third part is like bringing together all those parts, almost like a symphony of all the different instruments to create that beautiful music. So it's a 3-part healing series that I do sell on my website, but I'll offer it for free. If you email me, I'll definitely send it to you because it's very powerful. A lot of people are doing some deep healing, doing those 3 parts.
Oh, we'll definitely put your contact information in the comments on the video and in the comments on the LinkedIn event. Um, with now I'm kind of just going into the space of curiosity because Dolores Cannon became, she started talking about all the things
Mm-hmm,
like past lives and all this
mm-hmm,
connection to spirituality because she was a hypnotherapist and people were
mm-hmm.
coming up with these stories that were unique and they created intrigue within her that there's something more to this because she was
Yes.
seeing a pattern of time over time, something interesting coming up or something that was unique. So I have to ask you the question as a fellow hypnotist, what has been the most interesting or the most unique experience that you've had?
With a client or with myself?
In either one.
Well, for myself is I was still a paralegal. And I love Doris Cannon's work. I actually do Past Life and Lives Between Lives, which is Michael Newton's work. But I was a paralegal, but I was just starting to get into meditation because I had such a stressful job. And somebody said, "Why don't you meditate? It'd help reduce the stress." I'm like, "All right, don't really know how to do it, but I'll try it." And I started to do it a little by little. And I wasn't really getting deep. Like people say, "Oh, you're going to have all these experiences. You're going to go deep. You're going to feel so calm." But I was feeling better. The more I did it, the better I felt, less stressed. But then one day I only had 10 minutes left before I had to leave for work. And I said, "You know what? Try to grab a 10-minute meditation." So I didn't expect anything of it because I like to take a long meditation because it took me so long to get into it. But for some reason that day, because I had no expectations, I sat in my chair and I was actually just diving into hypnosis at the time. So I was doing both at the same time and plugged in, sat there. And next thing I know, I was out of my body in the most beautiful experience of light and love that I've never experienced in my life. I felt like I was being hugged by 1,000 angels. And what's interesting is, so my eyes were closed, but yet I saw this bright white light. The love was so amazing. But the next thing I just wanted to stay there. I didn't want to ever experience anything else but that, because you just don't get that experience here on this third dimensional planet. And next thing I know, I felt myself back in my body, but now I'm in a panic because I thought I was there for hours. Turned around, looked at the clock, it was exactly 10 minutes. On my way to the office, all I kept saying to myself is, don't go here, go back to the light. That's all I kept thinking, is I got to go back to that light. And then I'm like talking to myself in the car going, well, you can't do that. You have a job, you have kids, you have a husband, you got a family, you have to like live life, you know? And I kept saying, but I don't want to. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like it. I like that. I wanted that. I wanted more of that. So it was such an incredible experience. And I just remember telling people, and you can't even explain it because the feeling was so powerful that there is no words for it. But it was life changing. And that's when I really delved into connecting more with my spirit and the higher realm. Like that was the turning point.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I had an experience that was connected to that kind of feeling, and
Mm.
it's this feeling of absolute security, right? It's hard to tell how secure you're feeling. You don't have no worries in
Mm,
the world. Absolute acceptance, right? Unconditional
yeah,
love. It's this state of being where you're just filled with joy and you're filled with presence, and there's nothing you need to be, there's nothing you need to do. And that is one of the most beautiful feelings in the world. So I'm glad that you had that experience. It opens
oh,
up
me
the
too.
possibility of what, you know, we can be. And when you're saying go back to the light, well, we can carry that light within us, right? We can be
Yes,
that light in this world and show that to other people. So thank you for the work that you do.
thank you.
We've got about 2 minutes left. And what would be a parting message you'd like to give to somebody? Well, you know, what would be a parting message you'd like to give to somebody today?
I would really love for everybody to truly understand how valuable you are in this world. Because when we talk about a state of being, like you had mentioned, Stephen, that's who we really are. We are peace. We are love. That's our truth. But again, so many people live in their false self. See the light in them too. Instead of the judgment, say, maybe they don't see the light in them, but you could see the light in them. And you can only see it in them if you see it in yourself first, right? So once you really see it in yourself and you see it in other people, we're going to spread that light more and more, because once you see it in them, they feel that energy. They know you see them in a higher place. They know it. They also know when you see them in a lower place in judgment. They feel the energy. So if you hold them in a space around your own light and see the light in them, that namaste, I see the light in you, that's our state of being. That's our true state of being. It helps them get out of that false self and to really trust that they can be human around you, that they can let go of that perfection and fear of judgment and just be themselves and be comfortable around you. And the only way you can make somebody feel comfortable around you is you have to be comfortable within you.
Kelly, thank you so much for being a
Thank
guest
you.
on Mindset Monday. Thanks for your generosity, your time, and just thank you for being you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for all being you, and just thank you for all the love you share and the light you bring to the world. And thank you for the invite, Stephen. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it.